Hi guys, it's Kelly here and I am back with another video. Today we are going to be doing some watercoloring with the Timeless Poppy set from Gina K Designs. This is a super pretty set and it's very generously sized. So the ready cut Strathmore watercolor paper I'm working on is 5x7. So the reason, obviously you can see how large this image is. Which I love because, like limited on time. So anything that's kind of generously sized right now is really good for me. Um, but I'm going to stamp this down in Gina K black amalgam ink. This is waterproof, so it's not going to bleed with the watercoloring that I'm going to do. And I'm actually going to get 2 cards out of this image. So I'm going to stamp this down. I think I ended up stamping it twice just because sometimes it's a little challenging to get a good impression out the gate on watercolor paper just because it's more textured. So I'm going to stamp that, and I do think that I did it twice. Though I'm going to be honest, watching the video, it looks pretty good the first time around. So I'm not sure. Maybe there was something that you can't see on the camera that I felt like it needed to be done twice. But it has been quite some time since I've really used my Distress Oxides for watercoloring. And so I kind of wanted to do another video. I have done these before in the past. This is just kind of a look that I enjoy. It's a little bit more of a messier watercolor. Not everybody enjoys that, and that's totally okay. But if you do, this video is for you. So I've just picked a bunch of random Distress Oxide colors here that I knew that I was going to want to put in there. I love good color variation. I'm working on my Waffle Flower watercolor media mat. And so I'm just going to put down little dabs of color, and these will clean right off. It doesn't stain at all, which is fantastic. And then I just wipe it up with a baby wipe. This video is a little bit longer. Just because watercolor, with added coloring takes more time. For the messier watercolor look, because I do want there to be a little bit of a background, I'm going to just put water everywhere that I want color to be. So that's on top of my image, that's just a little outside of my image. I'm using a number 8 round brush to get lots of water on the paper. You can put down less water if you want your background to be more concentrated and less flowy. But I really wanted it to just kind of flow out from behind the image because I knew that I was going to be adding more color to make the image pop. And that, especially with Distress Oxides, because they dry a little bit like a chalkier finish, a softer finish, and watercolor already dries softer than what you see when it's wet anyway, that I knew it would kind of like fade into the background with the bolder coloring that we're going to do on top. I did try to keep my colors somewhat to where the image was. So you can see I'm putting down the greens, like where the leaves are. I'll be putting down the reds, orange, and yellows where the flowers are. They are going to mix. Gonna be honest with you. That's why it's a messier watercolor look. If there's color building up on the outside edges that you don't want, you could see I went in there with a paper towel and just kind of blotted up some of the water where the color was pooling and I didn't want it to be there. Watercolor is a pretty forgiving medium. So if you're not a fan of where it's going while it's wet, just blot it up with a paper towel. If it dries and you're not a fan of it, then just re-wet it and blot it up. You might not be able to get all of it, especially with the reds and pinks. There can be a little bit of staining. But for the most part, you can get a large majority of it. And especially if you're going to go over it with another color, that's not something that you really have to worry about. I wanted to add in some blues and teals just for, like I said, that color variation that I'm such a big fan of, and not everybody is, but I am. I think it looks pretty. So not right now. Right now it's a hot mess, but all watercolor is a hot mess before it dries. So if you're doing this at home and you're like, wow, this does not look the way that I think it should look, let it dry. It could surprise you. And so again, with the color variation, I've picked some orange, yellows, and lots of reds. I'm going to put those on top of my poppies. And again, we're going to be coloring on top of this. So it's just going to give us like a base layer to add color on top of so that there's just lots of variation. So I'm just going to pretty much get right into story time, and you guys can watch me paint while we talk. I know that I promised you the end of the dermatology story, and I will get to that. I just wanted to make a note that the other card I show that I talked about in the last video, the shaker card, I do have a video for that. But I wanted to be able to talk to you about Eric and my mom's birthday, because that shaker card was actually Eric's birthday card, and then I have another video for my mom's birthday card. And so I wanted to get this part of the story out of the way, so that way we could move on to other things when we were talking and it made sense chronologically. So that is why you're not getting the shaker card today and you're getting this one instead. So if you remember, a quick recap, I had a dermatology appointment and Eric was returning pants at the same time. So let's go way back. After I was pregnant with Nathan, there was a spot. It was like a little brown. It was like, we got to talk about this because I dropped my ink pad right on my paper. I forgot about this. So I dropped my ink pad right on my paper when I was trying to add more color to my palette. And so I'm going to go in with my paper towel and I'm going to try to blot up what I can. And then I'm going to add some more water to it and try to blot that up. It should be noted that the paper towel I'm trying to blot it up with is already damp. And so that's why it is picking up some of the color. I'm going to add some more just water on top of that. And then I'm going to add in, to cover it up, I'm going to add in more greens and blues. Ultimately, you're not going to be able to see it because I am going to do coloring over top of it. But this is a way that you can, I told you the reds can sometimes stain. So I wasn't able to get all of it up, but I wasn't that concerned about it because I just extended my background and then that worked and it was totally fine. If you want darker color than what you have on your first layer after your piece dries, you can go back in and re-wet it and then just add more pigment, which is what I am doing here. Just kind of re-wetting everything. I'm not putting down as much water as I did the first time around, but then I'm just adding in more pigment where I want it to be darker. I personally prefer the look of a bolder image, but you don't have to do that. If you're not interested in having them super bold and you like the softer look, you don't have to do the coloring on top of it. You can just achieve that look with the Distress inks and watercoloring with them. Okay, back to the story. So after I had Peanut, I had a spot. I'm very fair skinned and I have a lot of freckles. And so it wasn't terribly noticeable on my face. It was just, it looked like a large freckle. And it's probably about the size of like the tip of my pinky finger is probably how big it is. And it was just like a tan color. So it blended in quite a bit with my freckles. If I got a tan, it blended in a whole lot more. If I used self tanner, it actually picked up more pigment. So whenever I would use self tanner, like I would always have to like wipe off that spot. But it didn't bother me. It wasn't super raised or anything like that. And so after quite some time, one of my sisters had said something to me and was like, hey, did you ever get that spot looked at? And I was like, no, I guess I never really thought about it. And so a couple of years ago, I went and had them look at it. And it was drier than the rest of my skin, that spot. But it wasn't, I mean, I'm naturally dry anyway, especially during the winter. My skin is just super dry. So it wasn't really anything that I ever gave too much thought to. But after she made the comment, I went and had it looked at. Back to the card. So here's that. It's the background itself. It's super soft right now. And you could just leave it like that if that's the look you're going for, but we all know me and I like kind of a bold in your face color. So I'm going to color the image on top of my watercolor with my Copics. This is something, like I said, I have done in the past. I just haven't done it in a while. But I always love the results that it gives, even if it is a little bit more time consuming, because it involves the watercoloring of the background, letting that dry. And I typically let my watercolors dry naturally. I don't speed them up often. I won't say never, but not usually, because I don't like the way that it moves the pigment around and you get different spots, and I like it much more even. So anyway, so I did make an appointment and I went to the dermatologist and they looked at it. And at the time that they looked at it, they were like, you know, when women get pregnant, there's a lot of things that happen with your hormones and with like the pigmentation of your skin. It's why you get the like the line on your tummy, the darker line on your tummy when you're pregnant. It's something that's pretty common. And so basically what they thought it was just like a collection of melanin that made that particular spot on my face a little bit darker. They were like, you can get it removed or not get it removed, but just know if you get it removed, it's going to take a couple of weeks to heal. And the spot is on my face. It's directly underneath my right eye, like on the top of my cheekbone. And I have very high cheekbones. So I was like, well, you know, if it's been there for this long and, you know, I got a couple of weeks where, you know, it'll be healing. If it's not a big deal, then I'm not going to do anything about it. Well, then I went on maternity leave. And so now we're, you know, Peanut is 8. So that's how long this spot has been there. And so I made my appointment and they had tricked me another time. They had tricked me another time where I went in to have something looked at. And then they all of a sudden decided that they, like that day at that appointment, they were going to remove it. And I was ill prepared. So I went in, I made my appointment, and it was right before Christmas. And so when I went in and they looked at it, he was like, I think it's a keratosis. So now we have it's not just a collection of melanin. Now they think it's a keratosis, which is like it's like a skin growth. So he's like, I think that's what it is. He was like, so we can go ahead and remove it for you. And I was like, no. See, when I made the appointment, I told them, like, I'm not having it removed today. I'm not having it removed right before the holidays, but I will have it done before I go back to work because, you know, I was on maternity leave. I wasn't seeing anybody. So it was fine if, you know, I had this open sore on my face that I was waiting for it to heal. So I made a secondary appointment. And at my second appointment, so I go in, you know, you check in and everything else, wait for the doctor to see you. I get back there and they do a local anesthetic. But I have a fear of needles. We've talked about this before on my channel. I am very scared of needles, just due to my past history with them when I was younger. And so I'm very apprehensive. Typically, if I don't see them, it's not a big deal, but it's hard not to see a needle that's coming at your face. Am I right? I'm right. So I'm already very apprehensive about the whole thing. And so he puts the local anesthetic in, and then they basically, how they removed it is like they take a very sharp scalpel or razor and they kind of shave it off. So it removes that uppermost layer of skin. And so he numbs it and then he goes into, you know, kind of shave it off, except for I'm not numb and I can feel it, which is the worst because I'm sitting there with like my eyes squeezed shut, trying to, you know, pretend like he isn't coming at my face with a sharp object. And so I was like, hey, bro, I can feel that. And he was like, oh, you can? Yeah, I can. So he gives me some more local anesthetic and then goes in and removes it. They bandaged me up and then tell me, you know, I can take the Band-Aid off after 24 hours and then just to put Vaseline on it. That's it. So just a thin layer of Vaseline, like 2 to 3 times a day. And then once it's completely healed, they told me to buy this Serica scar gel and to put that on there like 2 or 3 times a day. If I was going to be in the garage, I was supposed to cover it with just like a little round Band-Aid. And so this is when the whole pants returning debacle is going on. My phone is blowing up, but I don't know it because I'm in the chair getting my face scalpeled. And so when I get done, I'm sitting there waiting for them to bring my paperwork in and kind of give me my update on how I need to care for it. And I see Eric's text message about these pants. So then I'm trying to call my mom to have her send me the email with the QR code while like my face is, being bandaged after being shaved off. And it was just such a crazy mess. And then this poor girl comes in to like give me my update and I'm on the phone and I'm like the rudest patient ever. But I was really just trying to help my husband return some pants that I accidentally bought. So the doctor who removed it told me, he was like, I'm 99% sure that it's nothing, but I'm going to send it for testing anyway. So I was like, okay, they have a patient portal. And so I'm, you know what I mean? Like after this, I'm just going on about my life. It actually healed up pretty well in about a week. And then I started putting my scar cream on it. And then 2 weeks afterward, I woke up. I'm already back to work at this point. I woke up to a message that said my results were in the portal. And when I went in there to read them, my biopsy results showed that I have skin cancer. I have squamous cell carcinoma. And so I have to go back in for another procedure. If you remember a couple of weeks ago, back to my video talking about my anxiety, here we are. This is what's going on. This is why I'm so super anxious. Because basal cell typically does not, it's just a skin cancer. And then melanoma is the most aggressive skin cancer, and so it can metastasize quite quickly. Squamous cell carcinoma is the one in the middle. So it isn't only just your skin, it can metastasize to your lymph nodes, it can spread, but it does so in very rare cases. And this spot has been there for 8 years. I'm very aware of that, of how long it has been there. And so I am very apprehensive about going in. The Mohs surgery that they do is like 99.9% effective to getting rid of all of the cancer, as long as it is localized to that area. Basically what they do is the surgeon goes in and he removes a layer, and then they have a pathologist that's there on hand that checks that layer of skin. And then if there is more cancer cells shown, they go back in and they take another layer. And this goes on until the pathologist sees no cancer cells on any of the removed tissue. But it does make for a very long day because you have to wait in between for the results to see if you have to go back in. Now, add to this that it is on my face, that some people, depending upon how much tissue they have to remove, need some sort of reconstruction afterward or some sort of plastic surgery from all of the tissue that's been removed. Sometimes they can do the reconstruction at the same time as the surgery, and sometimes it's more extensive and you have to make a secondary appointment. So with my anxiety, I typically do not take medication for my anxiety because it's more situational. But I did ask them once I got a hold of somebody, can we just talk about how finding out that you have cancer via patient portal is an absolute trash way to find out anything? Then we had an added complication because I found out on Wednesday afternoon. That's when I saw it in my patient portal. Then we had already made plans to sit down, me, Eric, and Nathan's dad, to go over Nathan's grades with him because he is having some trouble at school as far as getting his work turned in. So we were trying to figure out what was going on. So there was no opportunity to call. And then the next day, like that night into the next morning, was when Snowmageddon happened. So everything shut down. Like everything shut down. I couldn't even call them to be like, hey, what can you tell me about, this result? This surgery that I have to have, this skin cancer that you've diagnosed me with. There wasn't anybody to talk to. So between Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So now I have 4 days. I cannot call until Monday. Their office is not open until Monday. That I am just an absolute wreck. Total train wreck. I couldn't sleep. I was just super anxious, kind of lost in my own head. Just the things that anxiety does to you, worst case scenario. If it's something that has spread, most people, it's a very aggressive cancer if it has spread and it does not respond well to treatment. So a lot of people who have had this type of skin cancer, if it has spread, they don't survive beyond 5 years. And all I could think was, Caitlin won't even remember me. My daughter won't even remember me if that's the case. So, anyway, once I was able to talk to them, they told me that the surgeon who does this particular surgery is also a plastic surgeon. This is all he does for this dermatologist's office. So, like, this is his specialty. This surgery is his specialty. They are hopeful that it is just in the top layers of skin, but they obviously won't know for sure until they get in there and remove it. So I am scheduled for surgery at 10:30 tomorrow morning. So if you have a minute and you are the praying kind, I would appreciate all the prayers. I am very apprehensive about it. And so because of that, I did ask them about taking something for my anxiety. He told me that he would absolutely get me something for my anxiety. There's just more like bells and hoops to do with it if I go through the dermatologist's office. If I go through my primary care physician who's already, fully aware of my anxiety, that it's much easier. So I did have to make an appointment to go see my general practitioner. And so I went in, saw her, and she prescribed me an anti-anxiety med that I can take the day of. I cannot take it until I have signed my paperwork. So it's not like I can take it at home and be in a better headspace when I arrive. That's not the case. I have to wait until I am there and then take the anti-anxiety medication after I sign my paperwork. And then, we'll begin the process of removing the skin cancer and then the waiting period in between, which the whole thing just makes me super anxious because, like I said earlier, when they were doing the shave excision, it's lit right underneath my eyeball. Like it's right at the top of my cheek. So yeah, back to the card real quick. So here, most of you are probably just like cringing because I'm about to cut this thing in half. Don't worry. It's okay. It's going to be okay. I wanted to have two different pieces. And so depending upon which way you turn them or use them, you have a pretty good image here that you can use to make two cards. And I actually ended up using this to make two cards for my sisters. I loved the sentiment that are included with these, and this one in particular, because I do have two wonderful sisters, and that's why I needed two cards. But yeah, so Eric is going to take me tomorrow in the morning. We've already told Nathan. I don't think that he really understands. He doesn't, fully grasp what that means, but I'm clearly going to be bandaged up after my procedure, and so mommy is going to look a little bit different, and I don't want him to be frightened or have him, it be unexpected for him. I wanted him to know that it was coming. And so I just explained it the best way that I could think of, which was, I told him, how they teach you about cells in science class. And he said yes. And I said, well, mommy's cells are reproducing a little wonky. So they don't look the same as the other cells. And we have to make sure that they don't produce more cells that are weird or wonky. And so they're going to go in and remove them. And he seemed to kind of understand that. I don't think he understands it fully, and he probably will once he gets older. But right now, I'm pretty happy that ignorance is bliss, because I don't want him to be worried. So yeah, that's what's going on, and why I've been so anxious lately. And we'll just, there's nothing that I can do about it. Worrying about it isn't going to change anything. I've got to, and I have to constantly remind myself of this. I have to give it to God, because ultimately everything is in his hands. It's not up to me, what the decision is going to be. And I just, can pray for the best outcome and for his comfort during the procedure. And that's all I can do. So I'm doing all the things that I could possibly be doing. Yeah, so back to the card. The cards, plural. I just popped them up on foam, and for one of them I did them horizontal, and then for one of them I did vertical. I just, depended upon how the flowers were laying, it looked better to me, or instead of both of them vertical, which is how I traditionally make my cards. It just looked better to me if the one card was horizontal. But ultimately, I really like the way they came out, because that image is so large. It's really easy to get 2 cards out of it. So I trimmed the sentiment down, and then I'm just going to mostly glue them flat. There's a little bit of overhang on one of the sentiment strips. And so that's why you see the 2 little pieces of foam tape on the very end. And that's just to make them even for when I glue them down. I want them to be even with the card front. And so the sentiment says, a sister is worth 1,000 friends. And I am very lucky to have 2 wonderful sisters, especially now, because they've been, just super supportive and loving, and offering to do anything that they can do, which I know that not everybody has. And I'm very blessed to have people in my life who love me and support me. So to finish off the card, I just chose some clear rhinestones that I'm going to put on to accent each one of the sentiments. And outside of the fact that one is horizontal and one is vertical, they're basically the same exact card, which I really like, how you can get 2 different looks out of the same stamp. I think versatility is important. I am going to add some shine. You do have to be a little bit careful with this, especially if you don't do the copic coloring on top of it. If you just do the distress oxides in the background, you can move some of the pigment. But ultimately that's it. So thank you guys so much for joining me. I appreciate your time, and I will catch you on the next video. Bye.